I've been so fortunate, well, actually twice, in the span of less than half a year, to introduce and welcome Elena Kostyuchenko to CUNY, first time at Hunter, and today here at the Graduate Center. Thank you so much, Elena, for visiting us so often. It's terrific. Certainly, Elena does not need an introduction to most of you, but let me just very briefly say just who it is here with us today for the keynote talk on banned books, including Elena's own. Elena Kostyuchenko was born in Yaroslavl in Russia in 1987. She began working as a journalist when she was just 14 years old and spent 17 years reporting for Novaya Gazeta, Russia's last and major independent newspaper, until it was shut down in the spring of 2022, partly in response or, as a sad consequence of Elena's courageous reporting from the front lines in Ukraine. Elena is the author of 2 books published in Russian, but I will cite the titles in English. One is called Unwanted on Probation, and the other one is We Have to Live Here. She's the recipient of the European Press Prize, the Gerd Bucerius Award, the Paul Klebnikov Prize, to name but a few. And most recently, she authored a book that you see here next to Lena. In the original Russian, it's called Moia liubimaia, or Moia ellipsis strana, which was brought last year by Meduza with the simultaneous English translation titled I Love Russia, published by Random House. After this part of our conference and after lunch break, we will be welcoming the publisher of Elena's and several other very important books, Ivan Kolbakov from Meduza. And please join me in welcoming Elena to CUNY. Thank you for being here, Elena. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. It's a huge honor to speak here and to be here with you. I'm extremely nervous, so I wrote it down in Russian and then translated in broken English, and I'm gonna read some of my thoughts. And I left like loads of time for your thoughts and questions, and because I prefer it to be more discussion than a keynote speech. Okay. I never thought that I would find myself at this conference as a participant. I'm a reporter. I'm not very smart, not particularly educated. I basically write what I see and say what I feel. The particularity of my experience helps me to measure my own scale. It's in small and it will never be large. It is all the more surprising that my work and the work of my colleagues provokes a severe reaction from such a large entity as the state. But we are at the point of history then the witness, the testimony, becomes truly dangerous. Private experience, private opinion, private feelings that does not fit into the outline of the state narratives undermine its foundation. It shows that limitation of power, all that they can control, that varying success is our bodies and our lives, but not our inner speech, still continues to happen. I ended up in this profession by accident, but I'm truly devoted to it for the most selfish reasons. The experience of closely observing life is the essence of reporting. The more closely you look and see more accurately, the more successful you are. Besides, it's the best way I know to spend my own life. Reporting provides another advantage, impersonality. I didn't want to peer and to look into myself. I wanted to look into others. But when I was writing my book, I had to go deep into my own experience, defined by my choices, and it was both traumatic and healing. When I was writing my book, I hoped to find answers to the questions that tormented me. How is it possible that fascism arose in my country? How is it possible that I didn't notice or acknowledge it for so long? Why did I write the book but not another reportage? Because I felt that a one-on-one conversation was needed. An article is an appeal to the public. A book is an appeal to a person. It was truly difficult to find an intonation. I believe intonation is the most important thing in books. I wanted to create a safe space of memories. I wanted other people to address their experience as I addressed mine. Private experience allows to resist the state narrative, no matter how loud or seductive it might be. If you add up all the individual stories, you won't get the overall story. That is the well-known paradox. Fascism doesn't recognize personal rights and personal experience. So literature, often without meaning to, becomes resistance. After writing this book, I contacted the Russian publishing houses. 4 of them refused me, citing articles of the criminal code. The 5th agreed to print the book, covering up a dangerous lines in black. It will be like art performance, they said. I agreed to this, but then we simultaneously retreated from these ideas. They out of fear, me out of disgust. I was desperate. I thought of doing the same as Lenore Goralik did. She posted her novel online. But then I met Ivan Kolpakov from Meduza, and he told me their idea to create a publishing house. I'm sure he will share his own experience very soon, but I just want to say that they are very based on Soviet model, Tamizdat and Samizdat. So this is Tamizdat, and they also share this book for free in the application, and the application bypasses state blockages and will work even if the internet partially stops working in Russia. As you know, 2 weeks ago, an expert center was launched on the basis of the Russian Book Union to evaluate printed and electronic books publications for compliance with legislation. Their decisions are advisory in nature, but they are obeyed. Sorokin's last, I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. It's okay, I can make it. Sorokin's last novel was withdrawn from the sale and sent for examination to law enforcement agencies. This was done by IST Publishing House. But even without an expert center, the same publishing house recalled the books of Boris Akunin and Dmitry Bykov because of the author's support of Ukraine. Self-censorship remains the most widespread and effective type of censorship in Russia. Repression justifies fear. But I see propaganda as much greater destructive force than repression. It clouds inner speech, replaces it, creates chimeras, shaky structures, penetrates the human heart through the best feelings, compassion, love for family and our homeland, and it grows fears in our hearts. Russian propaganda is well sophisticated and well founded. Propaganda works together with repression, like the right and left hand. Repression determines what cannot be said, and propaganda determines what should be said. Joseph Brodsky considered the conflict between the state and literature to be essential. He said, language and presumably literature are things that are more ancient and ancient and inevitable, more durable than any form of social organization. The revulsion, irony, or indifference often expressed by literature towards the state is essentially a reaction of the permanent, better yet, the infinite, against the temporary, against the finite. To say the least, as long as the state permits itself to interfere with the affairs of literature, literature has the right to interfere with the affairs of the state. A political system, a form of social organization, as any system in general, is by definition a form of the past tense that apprises to impose itself upon the present and often on the future as well. And the man whose profession is language is the last one who can afford to forget this. The past strives to repeat itself, the future grows through it, like grass through the fall leaves. We can't see it yet, but we can feel it with our feet. I'm grateful for you all who feels that language should continue itself no matter what, that every private experience must be seen. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful for your generosity, and I'm very sorry for my broken English. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Milana. I just wanted to ask you what consequences, did you have any feedback from Russian official authorities after your book?
Thank you so much. Not yet, but there are a few cases then people tried to take my book into Russia on their suitcases, and this book was taken from them on the border. So I believe there is still no official response, but somehow our border patrol sees this book as a dangerous one. But we were lucky to smuggle this book into some prisons, and prison guards don't see it's dangerous, so it's great.
Let me ask, Elena, if I may. You call this book Tam is Dad, even if it looks so much better, and of course has so fewer typos and all other strange things that Tam is Dad is so notorious for, despite doing a very important thing, of course, back in the days. Since you mentioned this term yourself, can I ask you to kind of put it in a historical perspective? I know this is a futile exercise, but nevertheless, to what extent was this experience of the past publishers and authors, and of course people who themselves had to cross the border at some point or not, to what extent was this your background as you were working on this book, probably after you left Russia already, or maybe you started thinking about it even before?
Yeah, I was thinking about this book since 2015, actually, but it's not so easy to write one, especially then you have your daily routine, like being a reporter, you always have other texts to write. So I wrote it after I left Russia. Actually, this book became my salvation because, well, I left Russia on the first day of full-scale invasion. I went to Ukraine to report from Ukraine, and I was totally ruined by this experience. And I couldn't, while I was reporting, they changed the legislation, so I realized that I cannot go back to Russia or I will be in prison, but I still wanted to come back. And I realized that before I would be able to come back, I need to write this book. I started to write it in Prague. I finished to write it in Switzerland, but still I had high hopes that it's possible to publish it in Russia. It appeared that it's not. It's hard for me to put my experience into historical perspective, because honestly, I never was very much interested into the experience of people who lived before me. I was very concentrated on, like, nowadays. I thought that some of my friends and they were really into this historical research on Samizdat. And of course, I've heard about Ardis and other publishing houses. But I thought it's something what's gone for good and never will be repeated. But now we basically grow from this experience and use this experience for ourselves. For me, it was extremely important that people in Russia would be able to print this book if they cannot buy it abroad or don't want to read it online. So it was the part of my agreement with Meduza that they won't interfere if any people wish to publish it in Russia. And some people send me photos of this book published on printer, and they basically сшили ее, как сказать?
Stitched, bound.
Yes, stitch it. And it's interesting that not just books, but traditional medias are being printed in Russia like that, like Novaya Gazeta, which I had an honor to work in 17 years. Right now, they are forbidden in Russia, their website is blocked, and their media license is taken away from them. But they keep spreading PDF version of the articles. And this PDF version of articles and issues are being printed and spread in between people who don't particularly use internet as a source of information or who don't know how to use VPN. Recently, I met one Dolgan woman from very, very small northern village, and she said that they all read Novaya Gazeta by this way, like they have a printer and they publish and they print it themselves. Meduza do the same. They also have PDF versions of the articles, and they being spread in printed version. So Samizdat alive and Tamizdat alive.
It's funny to talk in English to each other.
Yes, true.
But anyway, first of all, I wanted to say that I think I would be talking from everyone, saying how grateful we are for what you're doing and what you've already done, and how we do admire your work, and that's how it is. But I wanted to ask, and I also wanted to say that I bought in Berlin in the Bible bookshop several of your books and posted them to Moscow, and they got through just in a parcel. But anyway, maybe now they're being reprinted in Zurich or something. That could be. I just wanted to ask you, because I actually was discussing it yesterday night with friends, actually the name of your book. And I know that it gets some criticism, I Love Russia, and my friends who really admire your work and read lots of your articles, they would say, what does she mean? And if she loves it, is it there an irony, or is that she loves it nevertheless, or whatever? And it's not the first time I hear people saying that, and that the name Моя любимая страна kind of puts people in strange position, what to think about the book. I think you heard it yourself, this sort of criticism. So I want to ask what do you think about these questions and how the name came to your mind? How do you what was the decision? I will call it Моя любимая страна.
Thank you for this question. When I made this decision, I was laughing like insane for like a day or something. But while I keep writing, it became less and less funny and more serious. Because I do love Russia, and I do think it's important to talk about this feeling now, specifically now, because there are so many people who want to tell us what should we feel and how specifically should we feel it and why should we feel it or not feel it. Like Putin, he says, if you love Russia, go kill Ukrainians. If you love Russia, obey, be silent, or lie. But love doesn't demand obedience or lies or murders. It demands very precise look at the thing what you love. And I hope that I made sure that this precise look I have in this book. I know that for some cultures it's just impossible to say this thing about your own country. When I wrote this title, I was thinking that it's like the easiest title to being translated. It appeared it's not. Like in Germany, they translated it this way, but they told me that only far-right people can say it about Germany, because after the experience of fascism, they have like a common conclusion that it's not the right thing to love your country. Like you can love your wife or your husband, you can love your children, you can love your neighbors if you're a very kind person, but not the country, because this love will end up with blood anyway. So I'm not in the position to argue with Germans. They paid a lot. Yeah, they pay a lot for this conclusion. But still, I feel that it's very strange that we give love to that only like far-right people or Putin can talk about love. I believe this feeling grows into our heart too, and we can define it ourselves. And I believe that love is like the strongest thing in the universe. Probably I am naive, but I do believe it. And sometimes it's even conquered death. So this is such a mighty power, and I don't want to reject it.
Hello, my name's Catherine Fitzpatrick. I've translated some of your words. I wanted to ask you the argument for books, because it seems so important to you that precisely a book get to Russians that they hold in their hand. But a book is very heavy, and it's taken away, you know? So the question is, why books? What's your argument for why we should publish books? Because we need to convince publishers more and more to do that. And are there other ways? We were talking before the conference, how to reach your Russian audience. Would it be by YouTube or radios, emigre or Western radios? По-русски, может быть?
Да, можно первый вопрос повторить?
Дело в том, что книга это очень тяжелая вещь. Ну, как вы сами говорили, что отобрали у таможни и так далее, да. Значит, нам на Западе нужны аргументы, зачем опубликоваться книги, потому что очень трудно их достать, и трудно, ну, вы сами говорили, что перепечатают, как в старых временах, да? Так что зачем именно книги, а не, скажем, голоса западные или там YouTube или еще что-то?
Thank you so much for your questions. I believe the books are so precious because the experience of reading book is very unique and it's very private. Like it's like a very private conversation, author with the reader. And the experience of reader is very individual. And book creates enough space for this individual experience and individual feelings and reactions. For me, as a reporter, it was always a struggle how to create this individual experience, how to penetrate the border between someone else's experience and your experience. And book has this might to do it. I don't know how it works, but it does. As you probably know, since, and this is your second question, as you probably know, since a full-scale invasion, Russian authorities blocked more than 1 million pages online. All independent media are amongst them, but also Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So the way how people deliver information right now to the readers is basically Telegram and YouTube and PDF, as I mentioned. I also believe that there are some resourceful things that we didn't do yet, like WhatsApp, which is like very popular in Russia, and if you put some information in WhatsApp and it got viral, it's really hard to stop it from spreading. So this probably would be our resources, but it's like a technological race between state and us, writers, journalists who want to talk with people. So far, I cannot say we are winning, but so far there is some kind of parity. But I believe the next stage, next step from the state would be criminalization of information consuming, like we did in Belarus. Then the crime is not just to write information or to spread information, but to read information. And for that challenge, I'm not sure we are ready. We don't know what to do with it yet. But it's all about future. So far, YouTube, Telegram, PDF, VPN, and like applications which has some instrument to avoid the blockage, like Meduza application.
Thank you. I wanted to echo the previous question because I think your name was maybe, the name of your book was maybe as important as your book, because I think for many people it was important to be able to speak about how they love or they miss their country, and I feel like none of us were able to do it before your book and before the name of your book, and now we can. And I think it is very helpful in how we build the beautiful Russia of the future, or even our community abroad, or interact with people from other countries and build dialogues with them. And I don't know if it's something you implied or not, but I'm very grateful, and I know that while we hear a lot of criticism like you mentioned, I also often hear people being very grateful just for you freeing them in their sentiments. Yes. No question, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
Hi. I was going to ask, is there another country where your book is banned too, other than like Russia?
Is there another country where this book is also banned in addition to it being banned in Russia, if I heard it correctly?
I don't know. This book is being published in 11 languages right now. So I know that there are some problems with Chinese language. So this book was published in Taiwan and it's spread in Hong Kong, but basically then it goes to mainland China. They have like quite the same problems like on the border what we have in Russia right now. So they basically smuggle it into mainland China. But they do it successfully because it's like a book about Russia and like it's a big book. So people don't really care what it's written about Russia. But but there is no opportunity for like official spreading of this book in mainland China so far.
Yes, actually that question made me think of something. When there have been book bannings here in the US, or things taken out of the library, the authors, new authors say, please ban my book, because it makes it so much more interesting and more people buy it. I wonder if there's a similar effect that one can see, perhaps not inside Russia, it might be harder to get, but that it's more accessible and in fact becomes more, just more commercial in a sense, just for the fact of being banned.
It's hard to make sure, like, because you cannot look at the parallel reality, then it's not banned and how it would be spreading in this case. But yeah, like right now, like with this book, we have like a little like Instagram trend. Then like people get this book eventually. They post it on Instagram, but they got this book and I got a forbidden book. It's so cool. And we also play with this thing, like this. So, but I think that like this like closed liubimaia, beloved, it's a very funny thing what Meduza ended up with in design. When I see it first, I was actually furious. I thought, no way I would agree for that. But when I start to think, why am I furious? And then I realized that I'm basically furious for like pretty the same reason what I wrote the book itself. And so this decision allows us to think on this question without even opening the book. So yeah, I think now it's a cool decision. So I do this thing, close the different parts of my liubimaia strana, and play with it in Instagram. So probably to some extent, yes.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I really love the title of your book, Yasha. I read it with him last semester. We read excerpts, and it was really beautiful. And when I saw the title, I really felt like it was a love letter. Like I felt the love that you had for it on every page. It makes me emotional. I'm not even Russian, but like I felt the love that you have for it. And I think that like to really love something, you're allowed to be critical of it because you want the best for it. And I think I can really feel that in your book of you want the best for your country, and it's devastating, and I can just feel it's beautiful. And I was curious on where do you go from there as a writer, as an activist, where I felt like that book was, I can imagine it must have been extremely emotional, and so put your soul into it. Are you a journalist right now? Are you working on a book right now? I'm just curious about your plans for the future and the present. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Well, when I finished this book, I faced some severe health issues. Probably you know what I'm talking about. But so about a year, I had to, deal with health issues, and I couldn't really work in the field as a reporter and all this stuff. And it was really painful for me because I'm used to define myself through my work. I know it's not very healthy, and every psychotherapist will tell you that don't do that, but I live like that. But recently I feel better, and recently I traveled to Ukraine to report from Ukraine, and right now I'm writing these reportages, and it's going to be published in Meduza as well. And I want to write a second book, and I'm scared like a lot because this book gonna be fictional, and that's very scary. Then you write like non-fiction or journalism, you have some boundaries and you can always rely on reality, and it really helps. On my new book, what I'm thinking about, I mean, it's also would be based on real story, so I'm not risking to go away from reality too far yet. But it's gonna be partially fiction. Recently, like last week, I wrote first 3 pages. They were crap, but it always like this, the first 2 pages. So I hope I will continue. I hope to start with summer, and probably if I will be lucky in a year, I will have a manuscript.
Thank you so much. I would like to follow up on Alexandra's comment, actually, on love. And we live in a moment of extraordinary political and social tension. Not only that has to do not only with the war in Ukraine, but as you know, everything that's been going on US campuses. And I just wanted to maybe ask you to reflect, and it's a bit of an unfair question, in that, what is love for you? Because I really want to subscribe to this very hopeful, also maybe naive, but ultimately the only belief in all-conquering power of love. But if I were to ask you to try to define what love is, what would you say?
Sure. I was thinking about it a lot. When I say I love my country, love for me is more the feeling of belonging. I feel I belong to it and it belongs to me. And then I say country, of course I mean people who united with common destiny. So I feel I belong to those people and they belong to me. They are my own. In this love, there is no a lot of excitement. It's more like when you love your arm or your leg. You're not like, oh my gosh, I have an arm, I love it so much. But if it hurts, this is the only thing you can think about. And right now, my love to Russia hurts a lot. And I know that it's not just my feeling. And I know that some people are choosing to reject this love, reject Russia, because it hurts so much. But I don't want to reject it myself. I love this feeling of belonging with my base, my roots, and it helps me not to feel in a waste space. It makes me attached to the reality. So that's why I keep loving, I guess. But, well, it's just words, Basically, love, it's some miracle what happens with you, and you can really influence on it. Like, it's just happening and happening and happening.
Elena, thank you so much for your talk and for all of your work. Just thinking for a moment about the role that the Mazda publications, like your book, always, or the view that was had of these publications in the West during Soviet times as a potential tool that could change things in the place that they were going back to. I happen to work in DC, and I work with a lot of people who genuinely care about Russia and have studied it their whole lives, but they look at opinion polls today, and they have very defeatist and skeptical and rather hopeless views of what publications, or rather any kind of independent information, can do for people in Russia right now. How do you respond to that kind of hopelessness and skepticism that I'm sure you have experienced yourself, maybe when talking to people in the West, and how do you respond to it?
Well, as you probably know, Russian journalism is being criminalized right now. I mean, like, journalism in Russia is basically a forbidden profession. But same time, Russian journalism is booming and blossoming. Like, there are so many old media who continue to work from exile, and so many new media who continue to work. And those media won't be able to work if we didn't have young journalists in Russia. I said young journalists because most of them are really young, like 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, who want to continue reporting and who are eyes and ears, like, on the ground. And all those people, all my colleagues who do it and who keep doing it successfully, won't be able to do it if this work won't be necessary for the readers. We work only for the readers. If we don't feel our work is needed, we don't work. So people want to know the truth, and their wish cannot be declined, not by repression nor by propaganda. People want to know. So our goal is to attach these people to the reality, to help them to be able to plan their actions, their choices, their future, or their nowadays choices. While those people are interested in us, in what we do, we should proceed. It's what I feel. And about hopelessness of all of this, I believe it's more being tired than being hopeless, because, like, it takes a lot of efforts to keep doing this work. But when you realize that it's not sprint but marathon, that it requires, like, a lot of work and lots of probably years of work and decades of years of work, then you find peace with this thought. It's easier.
Can I follow up, and sorry for kind of bringing it down to earth a little from the categories of hope or hopelessness, but I can just help asking this as part of the conference titled Banned Books from the Cold War to the Present, of course, war, including as a journalist, do you have any insights that perhaps you might share on a more pragmatic or practical note in terms of the attitude, support, or rejection, for that matter, coming from, well, institutions of power elsewhere who are, of course, in some kind of dynamic with Russia and its crimes today, without necessarily any parallels to what it used to be during the Cold War. But this is something that, of course, is very different today, right? Even academic programs that are devoted and dedicated to the study of the language, to the study of know your enemy, as it used to be called, of course, and as books used to be titled back in the days. God forbid they perhaps repeat those titles yet again today. But is there anything you might want to say, not just as an author of this book, but as someone who is, of course, at least raising awareness, right? Public awareness and governmental awareness of what's going on through your reportages, and also about what's going on in Russia among the young journalists and, of course, the readers for whom they work. Thank you. Sorry.
It's like a very general question.
Basically, it is, I'm asking about the bigger picture. Bigger picture in some circles that academics, of course, do not have usually access to, in terms of supporting this effort of reporting and telling the truth in Russia to the local audience, but also to the audience elsewhere by these same young journalists inside the country, supporting the independent media, perhaps.
Well, I don't know. I mean, bigger picture of
Adam? Well, coming from this idea of the Cold War that we all have, and part of it was, of course, support for studying the Russian language, supporting academic programs, publishing books, most of which during Tamizdat years were supported by Western, the Department of State in the US and other institutions of power. Do you see anything starting along these lines, if I may just put it so bluntly, in terms of supporting publishing of books like yours, of books, other books that are being written and will, of course, be published? I am just resisting calling it the new Cold War. This is what I'm trying to say, basically.
Okay. Well, I didn't live in the time of Cold War, so I can't really compare. Right now I'm teaching in Dartmouth, and my group of students who meant to learn Russian were writing and now staging the play on Sasha Skochelenko, a Russian political prisoner who exchanged some price tags into the supermarket with some information about the war, and she got 7 years in prison for that. She's also a writer and an artist. And when I started this class with Professor Victoria Somov, I didn't really know how deep those American students can, you know, interfere, can feel for Sasha, can go deep into the criminal case and court transcript, how interested they would be to think about her fate. And they became like super interested. They read it all through. They interviewed Sasha's girlfriend. They interviewed Sasha's friends. They spent like hours in arguing how our play should look like. And they also contacted with Theater Doc in Moscow, and this play would be staged both in Dartmouth and in Moscow simultaneously. So I believe what is happening is nothing like Cold War. I believe those invisible connections between Sasha and those students, between readers here and readers in Russia, between journalists, between politicians, those invisible connections are actually what keeps our world together and what protect us from the catastrophes. So I believe our goal is to create these invisible connections with our writings or our together work. And what I found in my students is a lot of curiosity and sympathy and passion about some Russian girl locked up in St. Petersburg prison. So it doesn't feel this way. What we can do here is to make voices of these young journalists unmentioned, and just Russian people who are talking with these journalists, sometimes risking their freedoms and their lives. What we can do is to make their voices heard and their experience seen. And so we would create some of these invisible connections ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you so much for what you're saying and what you're writing. I want to follow up on this young journalist that you mentioned. I met one of them via Zoom, and she told me, a very young person indeed, she told me that they all publish, if they publish, under pseudonyms, while she physically was in the middle of Russia. So I wonder, just you probably know about this more, how do these young people live? How do they survive? Are they being paid for what they do for, say, Novaya Gazeta Europa or other media banned, or Meduza banned in Russia? So how do they operate? Because obviously this is some kind of the, information guerrilla unit which we need to know about and probably need to support by all means possible.
Yes. Well, their life is hard and very different. Most of them, as you said, work under pseudonyms, and some of them even have to move from one place to another. Like I know a woman who moves like every 2 weeks because FSB is after her, and she lives in a village, then she moved to some big city, then she goes to some small town, and then she goes to another village, and this is her life. We really trying to protect them the best we can, but it's really hard. For example, in Meduza, only 3 persons knows the names of journalists who were collaborating in Russia. They being paid by cryptocurrency, so we're paying for journalism like for drugs now. It's really hard to protect them because the challenges they are facing is something what we never faced before. Some journalists keep working on their own names, like my younger sister. She lives in Russia. She lives in Moscow. She joined Novaya Gazeta investigative department. I'm extremely proud of her and extremely scared. How her life looks? Well, recently we talked, and she just published a wonderful article, and I congratulated her, and I asked her what's going to be her next one. And she didn't understand the question. And I asked her again, and she's like, right now we have just one day ahead of us. Like you wake up, you have one day ahead of you, you plan what you can do for this day, and you never know if you can come back home from your assignment, but if you did, and you wake up next morning, okay, now you have one more day ahead of you. So you try to work fast, as she said. You try to work fast, and you try to be precise, because you know that no mistakes are acceptable anymore. It's really, also we have like proxy media, which is, I believe, also a new thing. Because many independent media are marked right now as foreign agents or even undesirable organization, and for working with undesirable organization, it's a crime and it's punished by a prison sentence. So journalists in Russia, they open new media, named like with some stupid names, and they pretend to be journalists of this media, but then they publish, when they publish the articles into other big medias, which are undesirable and blah, blah, blah. We also have like fake media, like Женская правда by Феминистское антивоенное сопротивление, Feminist Anti-War Resistance, which is mimicry, yeah.
Pretends to be.
Pretends to be like a regular, boring newspaper with recipes and everything, but actually it spreads the information on repression and the war in Ukraine. And this media is also self-printed, and it's being printed by activists and just put into the mailboxes into a lot of towns, specifically in province. So it's how they are operating. But the most important things for them, as I said already, that they want their voices being heard, and they are furious when Western media starting to quote our propaganda media, like 87% of Russians voted for Putin and something like that. So it feels for them as a huge disrespect to their work and their experience. So.
Well, maybe just one last question before we take a break. Thank you.
Elena, thank you for your courageous work. I was admired for many years, and thank you for talking about love in such a difficult time. My question for you is, do you think the future of Russia is female? It seems that because of many unfavorable factors, female voices are becoming more prominent. I wonder if you feel yourself as a part of it, and I wonder if you think it will have a more long-lasting ripples, consequences for the Russian public life in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I do believe that Russian future is female. Right now we have a lot of grassroots movements, anti-war resistance, and the most successful of these movements is feminist anti-war resistance. It was recently named by state as undesirable organization, which is basically the mark of the highest danger for the state. It unites very different women all around Russia and also abroad. And it has a unique structure. It's like a cancer, but a good cancer. So it's a cell structure, like every woman or a few women can create a cell, and this cell can operate independently from any other cells, like it doesn't obey any other cells. But if it needs assistance or collaboration, it can address other cells and create a collaboration. So horizontal and mostly female protests is what's happening in Russia right now. And yes, I believe it will change public life a lot. It's already changing it. So a lot of new names and a lot of anonymous activists who don't want to say their names publicly, but who do amazing things. So, yeah, what's happening right now, it's, hi. What's happening right now is super interesting, and I feel I'm part of it. I'm collaborating with some of these movements.